It is time for me to tell my story in a clear and simple way so that it can be understood. I am sad and broken-hearted and frustrated because my friend Dan has stopped living. He and I were most marvelous, creative, cheerful friends for a long season of time in our young adulthood. Yes, you are an adult when you're 13, 14, 15 years old. You are an adult. You're a young adult, but you're an adult. We were very close in our young adulthood. He is no longer breathing. He is still alive because no one dies. The body rests and the soul waits for the next thing in the dwelling place of the souls. So it's time for me to tell my story. So first I have to give a warning. My story includes details about sexual behavior and the stimulation of the body, which is a nice ordinary part of human existence. It's no big deal. It's part of the reality. You know, if you've got a tree filled with oranges, you go and you pick the tree. You pick the oranges. It's just a mechanic of reality. If you have a sword sheath, the word sword sheath is what the word vagina means, sword sheaths. If you have a sword sheath, it is not wrong or inappropriate to think about having that sword sheath filled just because. Why did you climb the mountain? Because it's there. Curiosity, interest. So, in my story, I will speak of human anatomy and stimulation and desire because I was conceived by two people who were really good pleasure givers. But there was a problem. One of those two peoples was promised in a marriage, and there were children. And so because I was conceived in this relationship that is commonly referred to as adultery, which means breaking or fooling around with the respectful marriage covenant. And most people don't understand the difference between a covenant and a contract. A contract has clauses in it that can allow the parties of the contract to get out of the contract. But a covenant is an unbreakable thing. It's permanent. A covenant is permanent. And to many, that might be kind of a stupid idea, but it's a reality that we kind of have to cope with. So, start at the end. Because I had been in the habit of enjoying the stimulation of the body for various seasons of my life, I had been in the habit of stimulation of the body in situations shared with another person. Sometimes in the standard sexual intimacy with a woman, but other times in other ways. And I also have been quite familiar with stimulating myself. And there's a very, very interesting, very loving and kind expression that is actually supposed to be a part of ordinary family conversation. And that expression is this: do not awaken sexual desire, arousal, hunger for the one flesh pleasure sharing. Do not awaken the sexual love, because it is a form of loving and caring and serving another. It is a service. You are serving the other person when you're helping them experience their pleasure. Do not awaken the desire and the practice of sharing or developing or arousing the pleasure. Do not awaken the arousal of the pleasure until it is time. Now that's a funny statement, because what is the time? How do you discern when it is the time? And that's really fascinating. So we kind of have to answer, what is the proper time for awakening the very pleasant physical sexual love and desire? When is the time? Well, if you look around simple, natural, basic cultures, you discover that the time to select a person of your own and begin to share the bodies together is rather early in modern estimation. It's very peculiar that the historians declare that the mother of Jesus of Nazareth was almost definitely only 15 or 16 years old when she gave birth to that little baby kid. So there might be a lesson being presented here, a lesson to the general human family. There might be a lesson. In many what you would call primitive, natural, aboriginal cultures, there is a choosing of your person in the 13 to 16 year age. And guess what? I stumbled on a historical statement in colonial America in the 1700s, if a man reached the age of 16, he was expected to have a wife and a trade at the age of 16. He was expected to have a wife and a trade. I remember my friend Kit Brown, who grew up in Malawi, learning how to build and plant and harvest and fix houses and deal with animals. He was a very skilled person at 10, 11, 12 years old. Fascinating. Human beings have the capacity of being very, very great at a young age. Very, very skilled at a young age. And that helps with the development of family business, cottage business, and independence. However, there is a design in the schooling that is overshadowed and directed by the global power brokers, and to them it is beneficial to world control to have human beings who are not as capable in family business, but rather who are brought up in the schooling system to be prepared to be directors of corporations and portions of corporations. So therefore, even the wisdom about the simple, fun, pleasant sexual part of life if it is twisted and not presented openly and solidly with good cheer and basic principles, people can wander around and be confused. They can get themselves in trouble, and they can become weak, even an emotional mess. And I was an emotional mess on the inside. So very, very late in life, I had an experience with a friend. And since a good father, good leader describes their downsides first, their areas of weakness and possible mistakes, a wise leader focuses and shines a light on the weaknesses first, so that the whole operation might be more effective and efficient. Not hiding problems or errors, but putting extra focus, extra attention, extra announcements. Hey, there's a hole in the there's a hole in the yard right here. Don't fall in it. There's a hole in the yard. Hey, everybody, do you see the hole in the yard? That's better than not saying a word and feeling embarrassed about the hole in the yard. Hi, there's a hole in the woman that's really very interesting. And there's a cool, beautiful little point on the man that's also very interesting. Let's talk about that. Hey, everybody. There's a really cool, fascinating hole in the woman, the pierced. And it's not just a hole, it's like a welcoming place, sort of. Appropriately welcoming place. And there's this point on the man. What do we do with it? Sometimes it's not a point. It's just like a little soft thing. But then it's a big point. That's really interesting. Why do some birds have long beaks and other birds have short beaks? I don't know. That's just the way it is. How come a man has this little soft thing that then turns into a bigger, stiff and harder thing? I don't know. That's just the way it is. Oh, okay. So what are we supposed to do about it? Well, nothing right now. We're busy doing other stuff. So don't pay attention to that stuff right now, because it's not the only thing going on. It's just part of the program. Oh, but what about the nice, welcoming hole in the woman? Yeah, well, we got things to do. We can talk about that later. We can think about that later. It's not a first level problem, but it is an important problem. So, over many years of life, I'm 66 years old, the practice of stimulating my penis has just been a part of my life. Now, late in life, when I was almost 40 years old, I discovered that the story of Jesus of Nazareth is shocking. Why is it shocking? It's shocking because there are 200 to 300 predictions sprinkled across writings that stretch across 1,000 years. There are predictions written by 30 people who didn't know each other, and all of those predictions come true in one crazy world event. What is the world event? Is it an ice age or an age of excessive heat and melting of the ice caps? Is it an ice age? No. What is the event? Is it a new government popping up and predictions about details of that government popping up? No, it's not predictions about a government. Is it predictions about like an earthquake, a cataclysmic event with many details predicted about it? No. It's not the predictions of a cataclysmic event. These are predictions about one little human person and their life. One person. And some of the predictions have truly curious and interesting, and you might call supernatural or otherworldly details to them. So there's all these predictions about this supernatural visitor, Son of God, who is supposed to show up. And then he shows up as predicted. The people of his lineage before him, in what they call the covenant of Moses, they're all told, make lots and lots of babies, because one of your babies is going to be the anointed one, or the supernatural visitor. One of your babies is going to be the rescuer of humans from problems. Yes, the rescuer of all humans from problems. One of your babies is going to be the rescuer of all humans from problems. And the problems are invisible. The problems are in the invisible spirit realm. They're not just in the human realm. They're in the spirit realm. So this is complicated stuff. But in April 1994, finally, a person, a good teacher, who had written a good document, like I'm trying to write a good document right here, a person had written a good document, and I read it. And he said, hey, there's only one human being in all human history that has had hundreds of predictions stretched across 1,000 years, written by 30 different people that didn't know each other, that all came true in the life of this one person. Now, I had heard about this Jesus of Nazareth guy because I was raised in what I call churchianity. And I say that term with tongue in cheek because there's a bunch of missing practices and principles that are really neat and very wonderful and actually very helpful for humans, that were cut out by nasty dark powers and by human errors. So in the churchianity I was raised in, I learned some of the stuff about this supernatural visitor, but I was not taught about the practices that help you have a more satisfying life and what you might call mental health and stuff like that. So, there was this shocking moment in April 1994 where suddenly I realized it's all true. It's all true. The Jesus, God, Church, and Bible stuff is all true. And that brought me to a handful of shocking feelings. Oh my gosh, what about my marriage vow? I promised to be with one person until one of us died. And as far as I can see, we're both still alive. Is that marriage vow still standing? And oh my gosh, why am I knowing that God is real right now? Because I don't like God. I don't like the book. I don't like the people. I don't like the gatherings. Why have I been supernaturally singled out to have a full awareness that all that stuff is real? I was shocked. And I was extremely aware of my sexual behavior. Arousal and stimulation was something that I wanted to share with anybody if appropriate, necessary, or interesting. I didn't have a whole lot of conscience when it came to little opportunities of sharing the pleasure. And see, since I was conceived by two people who were very heavy pleasure givers, I mean, go figure. If there is an invisible spirit realm, both of my parents had spirits of very cheerful, kind, friendly, sexual sharing